here at my desk because it's late at night and I don't want to wake up Amber, and I don't think many of the neighbors are on the main floor at this hour. So I'm coming after my most recent episode of the Metal Lab, where I'm kind of recovering from one heck of a bad beating I took at the ROC Canada Cup. Now, a couple things going into it. First problem was I didn't have a desire to do particularly well. When it comes to the ROC, if I don't see myself going to Rocktober, I dial it back a lot. It's the same thing I used to do with Canadian Nationals, but now I just prefer to try to win that. It's a pride thing at this point. Beyond that, kind of also coming off of, like I said, a particularly bad beating that came from, most importantly, failure to heed my own advice. I mean, we all know the mantra of Metafix, let alone the Metal Lab, let alone anything when we talk about competitive play, is that practice will make your team better. And I made a massive error in judgment by choosing to play a team that I had absolutely zero games under my belt on. Now, I did something similar to Canadian Nationals, but not the same. Canadian Nationals, I went in with the monster team. I went 3-2, but I played games beforehand. I also did a lot more pre-planning and counterplay to the competitive meta as it stood then. This team, I thrust this on myself. You know what I mean? Like, there was some peer pressure to try this team out. But ultimately, it was on me to kind of accept its existence and make it happen. Part of this was, I wanted to be the guy that brought it out and see what happened with it. And unfortunately, that trial by fire occurred. Sorry, I'm just going to kill the monitor here. Trial by fire occurred in the worst possible situation. You know what I mean? Now, practice comes in many forms, and any games played with a team is a form of practice. You do want to try to practice in an environment where it's a little bit more competitive in nature, and sometimes practicing with friends has its weaknesses, and practicing in tournament is okay, but not the tournament you're supposed to be practicing for. So this goes back to that quality of practice. You want to get in the games that matter before the games that matter. And I kind of was a lesson to myself. Now, I will stress that some players have a natural talent for the game that I don't have. Part of it comes from an in-depth knowledge of everything that's going on in the game, as well as an in-depth knowledge of all characters. But that's a different form of practice. That practice is the research. Research is a form of practice. Being familiar with the entirety of the game is practice. I did not prepare myself for what could possibly be out there in greater form in a post-Batman the Animated Series world, because when I had played my monster team or the last competitive event I was in, Batman the Animated Series is still kind of fresh on people's minds, and they haven't quite penetrated the metagame yet. And this time around, we saw the Gotham City teams start to form. Not all of them containing a great deal of Batman the Animated Series figures, but a lot of them just kind of out of the woodwork suddenly. So it's something to be aware of as part of everything. So a lot of my failures are on failure to practice, failure to research, failure to inform, failure to understand. Should I have practiced prior to this tournament, this team would have been scrapped before I wrote that article for Majestics. But I decided to use the team on the Tuesday, wrote the article on the Wednesday. Come the Thursday, it was too late. The article was submitted, and I hadn't gotten any games in yet. My first game was in the second round of that tournament, so it was already way too late. And all of this storytelling is leading to the fact that I'm capable of losing just like anybody else. I think I've proven on several facts I don't win every tournament I go to. I'm not a Canadian national champion. I am not a ROC World Cup champion. I'm not even a Heroclix World Cup champion. I've never even competed in Heroclix US Nationals. So I am but at the same time, I'm observant of what's working and what isn't. And the player who won, Tom, and the player who was in second place, PJ, are both very prudent practicers. And it's an element of proof, as it were, to say, hey, I went in with no practice, and I'd say I'm a fairly good Heroclix player, and I won one game, and I can honestly say a major critical miss cost that player the game. Now, what other junk things did I learn from the use of this team? The importance of certain support powers. My team completely lacked probability control. I had outwit, but also lacked front dial perplex. I didn't get perplex until later in the dial. As a result, I was stuck with the dials that I had, and if anybody increased defense in any way, shape, or form, I wasn't hitting. Also, I brought a boxing ring that I was afraid to use, and part of that fear. The bad news here is my own. I like to call this, I think this is called your own. How do I put it? Your own taboos. Your own. I don't know. Can't remember the word, but my own paranoia has got to me. I've had bad luck with attempting to increase my defense a lot of times. And as a result, I get a little scared of putting myself in a place like the boxing ring. And the current metagame, the boxing ring just doesn't work. There's a lot of modifiers on the upward value that just make it not feasible anymore. We've learned to work around it, and it's a 5-point chunk that you're better served with an offensive ID card, I think, in the current environment. If I was to go back and remake this team, I would go and get some student IDs that were worth having and run with 4 IDs in total, 3 student and 1 headmaster, or I'd run 3 headmasters, depending on what mix gives me the best bang for my buck. But this is if you see this breakdown and this kind of understanding, you got to learn from your losses. You can't get too down on yourself, and do remember the important things like practice, like knowledge base. Get a good knowledge base in. And I'm going to walk away from this tournament. I'm going to say lesson learned. And should I not get any more practice time in, I do believe I will play a team I'm more familiar with in future events. For those of you who watch Into the Mind of Madness, my next adventure is for WKOs in November. I believe November 3rd is a sealed, and November 10th is a constructed. So we have quite a few weeks to either come up with new ideas or see what Battle World does for the set. And I think I'm going to ride the coattails of the monster team into that, because it's practiced, it's tested, it still functions in the current environment of the game, and it will. I think it will serve me better than what I had offered up myself. Though at the same time, I do have to evaluate the other teams in this current metagame. I do have to look at the other teams and see which ones I can feasibly build. While I do want to try teams with multiple Wolverines, I have to accept the fact that my kids need to eat, and I do need to get the Worlds. So I don't think multiple Wolverines are happening in my future anytime soon. But working around that will be a task in itself. So, lessons learned. I lost. Time to move on. Learn from my mistakes and never make them again. And the most important mistake to not make is to not go, or to bring a team that is unpracticed, untested, untried. Because with all of that, practice will make your team better. Have a good one, guys.